Ibrahim Abdelkader is devastated. He has just found the dead bodies of his brother and a friend.
When we came this morning, we opened the door and we found them lying here with their throats slit.
His brother, Ibrahim Abdelkader, was a Syrian activist. He was working for two anti-ISIS NGOs based in southern Turkey. This morning, we were supposed to meet him.
What's going on?
It's this bastard! Yesterday I was with them. He fled.
A young Syrian from Raqqa had infiltrated the NGO. For the family, there is no doubt. He was an Islamic State organization agent.
Who are you?
Ahmed will not be able to talk any further with us.
His brother.
The Turkish police wants to interrogate him.
Come with us.
50 kilometers from the Syrian border, Sanliurfa is the rear base for jihadist groups. In this video, entitled The Massacre of the Apostates, the Islamic State organization claims the two assassinations. This activist worked with Ibrahim Abdelkader. For safety reasons, he'd rather remain anonymous and stay clear of the crime scene. He affirms jihadists have spies everywhere.
They have sleeper cells here in Turkey. I know plenty of them. The Islamic State has quite a powerful secret service. They don't want anyone to reveal the truth. The media is their worst nightmare, their most feared enemy. Just see, they killed our brother today.
Omar and his team are on a mission to dismantle the jihadist propaganda. One of their tasks is to extricate Islamic State deserters.
We smuggle out people living under the control of the Islamic State organization so that they can reveal their practices. We want them to confess how the jihadists make fun of people, of foreigners and Westerners. They make them believe there's an Islamic nation, but as soon as they get there, they discover otherwise. They find out there's no state, no justice. The only law that matters here is survival of the fittest.
Most of the deserters extricated by Omar are Westerners. This woman, who speaks French, wants to leave Syria.
Salam alaikum. Je veux aller plus vite avec mon enfant et maintenant mon mari ne vient pas à la maison, seulement 2 jours par semaine.
She doesn't dare go out of her house. Sometimes she sends us messages in which she cries. There are lots of people who want to escape, a huge number, but they slaughter them. As soon as we spot someone who wants to leave, we start monitoring him or her. Once we were asked to help a candidate, supposedly French, but it turned out to be a trap set up by the Islamic State group.
It is a war of shadows in which extreme caution is the name of the game. That same evening, we meet Samir. He will stay anonymous as well. He's a former officer in the Syrian army who joined Islamic State organization's secret services.
The Secret Service are the most powerful entity in the Islamic State. Administrative, military, or economic officials come after.
Samir deserted in July 2014 when the Islamic State organization expelled Nusra Front from Deir ez-Zor.
I escaped with a car and all the weapons they had given me.
His position as a senior executive made it easier for him to escape. But things can turn dramatic for the majority of those who are willing to flee.
During the Tabqa airport battle, some took advantage of the chaos to run off in civilian cars. But they were chased by 2 big cars. They were caught and chained at the back of the cars and dragged throughout the city of Raqqa. Islamic State men toured the city with their corpses. Later, they hanged them from the clock tower.
Samir says he left the Islamic State organization because of its extreme violence. But the former officer didn't really open up to us. Heading to Istanbul. The city is home to over 350,000 Syrian refugees that melt into the crowd. The district of Esenyurt is like a little Syria. Most of the devout attendees of this mosque are Syrians.
Syrians are caught between a rock and a hard place. The regime slaughters and destroys on one side, and on the other, jihadists accuse people of being unbelievers and murder in the name of Islam.
Among these refugees, there are definitely people who have fought with the Islamic State.
Many have been fooled. Some have lost a brother, an uncle, or a neighbor, so they were ready to fight under any banner. Some realized they didn't agree anymore with their faction. Others were wounded and had to leave. And there are those who realized that war was going to go on forever.
Said is a deserter who has found refuge in Istanbul. What he fears most, his fellow citizens.
I'm not afraid of Erdogan, nor the authorities. If I were afraid of them, I would have never settled in this country. But what frightens me in Istanbul is if someone recognizes me.
Said didn't come empty-handed. At times, he traded his Kalashnikov for a camera. He wants to show us unpublished videos he has shot himself. Said filmed this hashish field near Mayadin in eastern Syria.
Allahu Akbar.
Here they were growing a whole field of cannabis to produce hashish. Take a look at that, cannabis seedlings. The Islamic State group ended up selling all these drugs. So I told them to destroy all this. It was a tractor. But they refused. They stopped me from doing so. Here we went on a raid. We arrested a man. We were informed that he was a shabiha, an agent of the regime. These were only assumptions, we had no evidence. But a man assured us that he was a shabiha. He swore with his right hand. And here he is. So we took him to the headquarters, and 2 or 3 days later he was executed. Where the Islamic State group is established, every morning people wake up and discover dead bodies. There is no trial, no justice, and no one can argue, say anything to defend themselves. Orders cannot be disputed.
Originally from Homs, Said first joined the Free Syrian Army. After Homs was taken by the regime, he moved to Deir ez-Zor. At the beginning, this conservative Sunni was convinced that the Islamic State organization was the most efficient force to combat the regime. But their strategy disappointed him and ended up scaring him.
We had to cleanse the region of any Free Syrian Army fighter. It didn't matter if they were Sunnis. Most operations were against Sunnis. The Islamic State group says they came here to fight the regime, but the truth is that the regime is not on their agenda. They swindled us. Their media and propaganda is a pile of lies. They're only about hatred, deprivation of freedom. Even the Sharia they talk about is a lie.
Gradually, Said came to feel threatened himself.
They started executing my friends, my fellow soldiers. I began fearing for my safety and my family. I wanted to escape, but what kept me there for so long were my parents, and I also feared for my wife and children.
In the spring of 2015, once he had ensured his family's safety, Said deserted. But the year he spent under the yoke of the Islamic State organization has left deep scars.
For any kind of reason, we would see on a daily basis people being hanged, women being stoned. Our children have become used to these horrific scenes. They're brainwashed. Now they have their word to say. They denounce people. I saw a child shouting, "That woman should be stoned. She must die. We have to bleed her to death."
One of the reasons he decided to escape was the problematic relationship with foreign jihadists, in particular the French, many of whom settled in Deir ez-Zor.
They were a lot of French. They came in numbers. They spoke French and wouldn't mingle with us. We, as Syrians, were not valuable to the organization anymore. We felt that the emir liked them more than us.
Said says they were paid 3 times as much as the Syrians, and they were ready to do almost anything.
Most Syrians do not volunteer for suicide missions. The French, however, don't seem to care. We were really surprised by that. That's why the emir seemed to like them more. When he would ask, "Who's in for a suicide operation today?" the French would all raise their hands. They were confident about it. They must have been brainwashed. And I have to say, we locals, we didn't like them. And they didn't like us. There was a lot of fear and mistrust.
Before leaving, Said wanted to show us a picture of him with his former comrade in arms.
You see these 2 guys? Both are dead. And these 2 here, they've deserted.
Like Istanbul, Tunis is also home to many deserters. 6,000 Tunisians have joined the jihad in Iraq and Syria, more than any other nationality. According to the authorities, 700 have returned home. Among them, Farid. In early 2013, he joined Al-Nusra Front, an al-Qaeda-linked jihadist group in Syria, many of whose members later fought with the Islamic State organization. He was sent by his boss, the owner of a restaurant.
After the revolution, it was hard because there was almost no money. Even graduate students were jobless. He told me, "I'll give you money." I had 2 motivations: jihad for the glory of God and money. We had agreed on 1,000 euros a month, but I never got them.
To escape, Farid used an old trick.
I did that with the bayonet of my Kalashnikov. It was the only way to escape, to hurt myself in order to be admitted into the hospital. Take a look at that. They stitched it without anesthesia.
A month was all Farid needed to understand the reality behind the high ideals preached by his recruiter.
I realized that it wasn't about religion. It's all about politics. They wanted to conquer countries, and they had us involved in that plot.
2 years later, Farid believes that he slipped beneath the radar of the authorities. He's certain that no family member knows about his story. The foreign minister displays firmness. Those who took part in the battle will be treated as terrorists.
Those who return, those who are asking to come back home, while one cannot prevent them from doing so, we must act responsibly and implement a program that addresses all aspects of the problem. Committees have been set up to find the right strategy.
So far, no country has come up with a strategy for dealing with deserters from the Islamic State organization. Yet, like Said, they may be the best equipped for countering its pernicious propaganda.
That's it for this edition of Reporters. See it again, of course, on our website, france24.com. Stay with us.